What's going on, everybody? Fedor here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Sunlu T3. And apparently, this machine can print at 250 millimeters per second. Now, this is an average size machine. It is a bed slinger machine, and it is not a direct drive. This is actually a Bowden setup, and I haven't done one of those in a little while. So I'm excited to see how and why Sunlu was able to get this machine to print that fast. I have a lot of machines that I would call dialed in, and believe me, they don't go anywhere near 250 millimeters per second. Some do, but you lose some quality. And obviously that's just the nature of the beast of one of these Cartesian machines that slings the bed. I know that Core XY machines can go much faster and tend to keep their quality a little bit faster, but this thing is not one of those because it is $250. That's right, this machine can go 250 millimeters per second for $250. That's an extremely affordable price for such a thing, so I'm really excited to see how and why Sunlu pulled this off. So just like I do every other machine on this channel, I'm going to unbox it. I'm going to show you what is in the box. We're going to put it together, and then I'm going to spend around a week or so putting this thing through its paces, throwing some various filaments at it, and seeing what it's all about, so that in case you guys are interested in buying a machine like this, you can see if it's worth your time and money. Now, I was sent this machine for free by Sunlu, but I'm not obligated to say anything specific or do anything specific, so I'm going to treat it just like any other machine on this channel, and I will give my honest opinions and my honest impressions on the machine as we go. Now, since we don't have a preview here on the box and nothing to point out, let's just get this thing out of the box and let's get the show on the road. All right, let's go. I got my blade. All right, we have a plastic spool holder, looks like. A couple of little baggies. All right, I see quite a wide spatula. Oh yeah, Sunlu coming through with the side cutters. Let's just dump that out. Look at this little packaging for needles. Usually these are loose and a little baggy. So these are meant to unclog nozzles. There's a little needle in there, nice. Zip ties. Little tiny nozzle wrench. We have our adapter with an SD card in it. It is a SanDisk 8GB micro SD. That's nice. Looks like this little numbered baggie has some hardware in it. Yep, we have some large hardware for assembly, smaller hardware. Okay, so this is just some baggies for assembly. Looks like number 4 has some basic tools in it. Yep, just some basic Allen keys. So baggie 1, 2, and 3 have the hardware for installation. Then it looks like bag number 5 has some spare parts. Let's see what's in there. I can see there's a nozzle in there, an MK8 nozzle. There is a few of these little white pieces. These are the probes for the auto bed leveler, and it looks like they're magnetic. So if something gets bent because of heat, or maybe you get some PLA on it, or whatever filament, you can always remove it and pop a new one in, and you get 3 in here. That's really nice. Not bad. We have a 8mm and 10mm wrench. We have our cable to hook up a computer to the machine if you need it. Let's get into the next bag. All right, I remember Sunlu included this last time in their filament. There you go. There's a 25% off coupon for you. All right, we have a user guide. Very basic, very simple, nice big photos, explanations in English. I can't imagine what this is for. These are some massive zip ties. I mean, okay. All right, now I'm gonna look through this book to see what the zip ties are for. Yeah, I got nothing. I guess we'll figure it out as we assemble. And finally, in the bag is a power cable. All right, let me set all this aside and continue getting everything out of the box. All right, this is the other part of the spool holder. I don't see a bearing, but okay, a little different. All right, here is the power supply. All right, we have an XT60 plug on the bottom there. 50mm fan. I can't see the branding on here. It looks like it is set to 230 though. So let's go ahead and flip that while we're here. And I will put that back after I do it. Let's see if the pen's good enough. It is. Now we got it switched to 115 volts. I'll go ahead and cover that back up. All right, power supply, ready to go. Okay, oh yeah, this is one of the little Sunlu filament spools. I have actually been using these. Sunlu earlier, months ago, sent me 3 of their little spools. I think I had it in the video. I've been using them here and there. They're okay. You know, pretty regular PLA. I am noticing that they do tend to be a little bit more brittle than I expected, but otherwise they print okay. Still, really like to see these little spools included, because the little tiny winding that you normally get with printers is just not enough to do anything conclusive or even just to test your machine. So it's nice that they give you a little spool. All right, and the rest in the box is the machine. So let me go ahead and put this box down on the floor, and I'll take the printer out and bring it up here. Okay, that's an interesting way to do it. Looks like they zip tied the machine into here so it doesn't move and doesn't slide about, and it's on these giant zip ties. So that's kind of interesting, actually. All right, so here is the machine. We don't have any quick disconnects for the cables, so when you do take it out of the box, be aware not to just take off the top section because that is attached via these wires. So just some interesting things I'm seeing right off the bat. Let's go ahead and discuss. I don't quite want to set this up on here. So this is not a PI. This is one of those polycarbonate flexible sheets. Not bad. You know, I wish it kind of was the PEI sheet, but it is a really inexpensive printer that promises to go fast. So not necessary. I'm not going to discount them too much for it. All right, so we have a single-sided Z axis over here. Single-sided Z, it does not have a bearing on the top. That's totally okay. Interestingly enough, and I've never seen this before on other machines, there is actually a fan that's going to cool the extruder motor. It does have a dual-geared extruder with an adjustable spring. It has a really interesting metallic clip holding the PTFE tube. We have a traditional Bowden setup. The sensor for auto bed leveling looks really similar to the BL Touch. Yeah, the top here also has one of those metal clips, and I'll show you a little bit later in some of the footage as I take a closer look at all of this. We also have a filament sensor, filament runout sensor, and it does have bearings on the input, which another thing I haven't really seen anywhere else. Usually it just kind of grinds on the opening of that. All right, so as far as assembly goes, looks like this will just be sat right on top. Let me go ahead and get this hot and a little higher so we don't hit the bed while we're assembling it. Okay, so it does look like a pretty traditional Cartesian style printer where we are going to open up number 3 here and put these larger pieces of hardware through the bottom to hold all this on. Just some more things. I see a belt tensioner on our X axis. Do we have one on the Y? We do. We have one on the Y right on the bottom here. The bottom of the printer, the front here where the old school display is all plastic, but there is no bin for like tools or anything like that. Okay, there is a little bin right here on the right side that you can put stuff in, but it doesn't have a drawer to kind of close that. That's okay. Interestingly enough, and once again I'll show you this in footage a little later because I don't have this assembled, I don't really want to pick it up, but the wheels for leveling are doubled up, as if you can set the level and then lock the level with the secondary nut here. So that's kind of interesting, never seen that before. The bed itself is riding on just 4 wheels. Is there any wiggle? None. Is there any wiggle? None. So everything else as far as the wheels go is attached pretty well. No complaints there. Okay. All right, let me go ahead and assemble it. Looks like assembly is going to be really fast. It especially is going to be really fast because there's no plugs to plug in. Typically, even though you put in some hardware here and there, you still have to plug everything in, but here it's already all plugged in. I think the only plug that we are going to have to use is this XT60 to plug in our power supply, and that will mount right over here, and it gets mounted to our gantry system here. So first we're going to install this, then we're going to install that, plug everything in, and then I will show you what the menus look like. We'll see some of the settings, And then we're gonna get right into it. All right, so far so good, really simple. Let's keep going. All right, so here we have the T3 screen. It is one of the old school style single color displays. Some actually prefer this because these screens are actually more compatible with more motherboards, which means if you ever wanted to upgrade something along those lines, this screen would actually be easier to deal with in terms of compatibility with different motherboards. Who knew? But yeah, here we go. We have some customized Marlin pieces in here. For example, they have their logo up here. This little F that you see right over here actually means the fast print is on. But that's beside the point. Let's go ahead and take a look at the menus. This is the first time I'm seeing them as well. All right, let's click into motion here. We have our typical move axis, auto home, X, Y, Z. We have a level menu. Way to disable. Let's take a look at the leveling menu. So in here we have the auxiliary level. This is just how the BL Touch is used, and you can turn that on and off. You can have it completely manual if you wanted it to. Here you can set your Z offset. Let's just make sure it is set to 0. Looks like it's not, so I'll wait for it to do its thing. It does move very fast actually, which is nice. So it looks like it's going to probe, do its thing, and then let us adjust the Z offset. But for now, I'm going to set it to 0 so that I can level the machine and then set the Z offset afterwards. And actually, visually, it looks really good. Wow. Let me just move it a hair just to see where it goes. Yeah, honestly, it looks pretty good. You know what? I'm going to go back on my word. I'm going to leave it right here. That looks good to me. Okay. So that was Z offset. Here we have manual leveling. So when you click this, actually, we'll just do it. It'll go to each corner. And like I said, it's moving really fast. I know you can't see that right now, but you will go through each corner. It'll move for you just like that. I know you can't see it move, and we've now hit the lens. Great. Well, that was fun. Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and hit done. So you can go around, keep going around in a circle with your paper and make sure that your bed is leveled. And that is nice and easy and actually really fast. And then make sure that you hit store settings so that all your settings are stored, and it'll give you a nice beep. So far, very easy, very reminiscent of my older machines. And you can, once you get a hang of this thing, you can actually move through here very quickly. All right, let's go ahead and go through temperature. Here we can see nozzle and bed. While we are in here, let's set the bed to 70 so we can start heating up for our leveling and Z offset settings. We have our fan speeds. We have our preheat settings. We can tell it to cool down. So just the basics so far. Let's keep going. Configuration. All right, so advanced settings. Let's see what they've enabled for us. So we have home offsets. That's nice to be able to do. In case you put on a slightly different size bed, you can change the offset here. The velocity, acceleration, jerk settings, your probe offset. You can change your steps, your temperatures, probably the temperatures for... Okay, the max, really, the max. Can we change the max? Wow, interesting. I guess this is when it will sound an alarm past the 250. That's cool. Usually that's set automatically, but cool. You know, the more features, the better. Filament sensor, I'm guessing, is in here. Oh, okay, this is the run out when you want it to turn on, how much you want it to unload and load. Okay, this is great. It goes into a little bit more detail than I actually expected, so that's very nice. All right, let's keep going. We have the Z offset is already set. I guess there's 2 places you can do this. Okay, easy enough to wait. This thing does this very fast. All right. The speed of this movement kind of reminds me of the Sidewinder X2, how fast it moves. All right, let's see what it says for BL Touch here. We can reset it, self-test, deploy, stow. and SW mode. I'm not sure what SW mode is, but we will cross that bridge when we need it. Runout sensor. The runout sensor is actually kind of interesting because of this feature here, the jams feature. Apparently, if you have a jam, it can use that sensor to do something to try to free the jam, which I found kind of interesting. Some kind of pre-programming enabled in this firmware. So it looks like we have power outage on. It's probably worthwhile to keep that on unless you're getting, I know there's sometimes when you print the outer contour, you can get some random blobs. If you have that, try turning this off and it'll help unpause between different layers. It rarely happens, but if it does, whoops, if it does, then that would be the place to go to. Where were we? Let's see. Yep, we were here. All right, then we have our preheat settings, load, restore, defaults. Okay, I'm just gonna hit store again, just in case we have everything back to how we want it. All right, we have change filaments. Let's see if it does it right away. Okay, we can just change, load, unload, cool. Nice and easy. Always nice to have those so you don't have to fiddle with knobs. Print from SD. You can change the language. Let's check the about. We are on version 3.4. Okay, not much information there, honestly. Looks like and fast print is on. Remember that F I showed you in the front? If you turn the setting off, it'll say an N instead of an F there for fast print off. All right, so let's go to print from SD. Let's see what's on there. We don't have G-code files? No G-code files on the SD card. Okay, I'll check their website to see if I can find them there. Let's see if they're maybe hidden. Interesting enough, typically we have some G-code to print. I mean, no problem. I'll find some myself, obviously, but okay. Yeah, so that is an overlook of the menu. Very simple, very fast once you get a hang of it. No nonsense type of display. This printer is definitely a budget machine, so I'm not necessarily worried that there isn't a fancy screen here. All right, I'm interested to see how fast this thing prints because so far everything else moves very fast. So let me go ahead and go through the leveling process and let's go ahead and find some prints to get through this T3. Let's go. All right, let me try to explain what I think is going on. So one thing that's happened is since there were no files on there, I went on the Sunlu website and I grabbed some T3 specific files in their download section. They literally are T3 specific models and they even give you times on how long. So the first one I tried was, it looks like some kind of organizer. I'm almost assuming it goes into the drawer here. Let me see if it fits. Yeah, it does fit in there. I'm not sure if that's where it's meant to go, but anyway, there's a little organizer and it started printing, but it was just not the best print I've ever seen. It was peeling, curling. It looked like it was almost too hot for the filament. And then there's a layer skip here and then it just clogged. And this was cool because it didn't just keep printing in the air like it would and just grinding the filament. The jam protection actually worked. It detected there was a jam, and I didn't even notice it was a jam because it didn't look like one at first. And I just kept clicking continue and it kept detecting a jam. So that's actually a really cool feature. I'm not sure I've seen that on anything else. So my thing was maybe it's the filament. The filament is old. So I put in some recent filament and it failed instantly because of a clog. I did the same thing, except on layer 3, I believe. it is printing extremely fast, so I'm not totally surprised. But then, so what I did was I took apart the entire hot end, I cleaned it, there was nothing out of the ordinary. The PTFE tube was cut the way it's supposed to, nice and flat. Everything was assembled correctly, there was no gaps anywhere, the filament was flowing through it really nicely. So then I tried again. This time I switched up the file instead of the filament, and clearly 210 whatever on the files, it just couldn't handle it. It was printing way too fast, it kept clogging, and then eventually the same thing happened. It clogged and started detecting jams. So then I slowed it down a bit. I slowed it down just a bit, and it did manage to finish the print, and it does look okay. It's not going to win any awards, and it was definitely still running too hot at 210 for this filament. But it's still going at lightning blazing speeds, and you know, I have some footage of it printing, so I'm sure you guys saw that for the preview. So then I tried again. Since it printed this, I went back to the box thinking, hey, maybe just something wasn't right. So I turned off fast printing so that it goes back to normal speeds of this type of machine, and I started the box again, and this is as far as I got before it clogged itself again. And it gave me the same errors. So I'm not sure still what the problem is. If all the hardware seems to be okay, I'm not sure why it's clogging. At this point, I'm just going to assume that something is not sliced correctly or not jiving settings-wise with the between this machine and those pre-sliced files. So I got the machine loaded into Cura. I'm going to slice a couple of my own files and see if it still works. And just for this test, I'm not going to change the filament again. I'm going to keep these same 2 rolls of filament. I know it's not very exciting as a showcase of the printer for these 2 colors, but I want to test and figure out what the issue is, because at this point I can't exactly pinpoint what the scenario is. So here is the results, I guess, of what it's going to do with our own sliced files. And just this thing, I'm using my profiles for the Voxlab Aquila. Essentially, it's the same Bowden style machine. I have fast printing off. My objective is to just get a successful, clean looking print, and then we'll play with speed and determine what the actual cause of the problems is. All right, let's keep testing the machine. And well, here's some footage. Let's see what happens. All right, so it's day 3 without being able to print, and now we have proven that it's not a slicing thing. I sliced my own files from Cura, printing from the SD card, and it failed exactly in the same way as a clog. So now I have a feeling that it's 100% a physical thing. So I'm going to go into my spare bin here, and when in doubt, nozzle out. So I'm going to throw in a new nozzle. I'm going to take off the hot end completely so I have it in front of me so I can have a better look at everything. I'm going to throw this on, and then we're going to give it one more try, see what happens, and go from there. All right, hopefully we can get this T3 printing. Let's try it. All right, I just started talking to the camera and I realized it wasn't recording, so I don't have a video of me taking this apart. However, here is the heatsink for the hot end here. It's a decent looking heatsink. Wish there was a bit more fans, but this is their own design, not just the Creality clone. It just attaches in the same way with 2 screws directly to this block. I left that all the same. Here is the heat break, and it is the type that the tube goes all the way through, just like this. And as you can see, it does go through, which means there isn't like a little lip or anything like that that gets in the way. And essentially then there's this nozzle that sits right here, just like that, where that tube butts up against. If you look real close, I know it's gonna be tough to see. This isn't the perfect lens to do this kind of thing, but there is a tiny little lip actually on this nozzle. As you can see that dark ring in the center? That's where filament gets held up. So I have a feeling that maybe this nozzle was bad. Now here's a fresh nozzle, and as you can see, this area on this nozzle is completely flattened. Whereas here, there's kind of like a lip for it all to pull into. So this is the standard nozzle that came with it. This is an aftermarket nozzle that I'm going to throw in here, and I have a feeling this will be our solution. So let's see what happens. I'm going to throw it in, put everything back together, and we'll print exactly the same files. All right, let's give that a go. All right, that is the Sunlu T3. We had a little bit of a bumpy start, but as you can see, it is perfectly printing now, and actually really fast. Now, when you do print at those ridiculous speeds for such a machine, you do see a little bit of a worse quality, obviously, right? There's got to be some kind of trade-off where you're taking pretty much the same machine as everyone else and just kicking up the speed without much of anything else, right? There's no hardware to really support this. Now, I think on their part, it was a good idea to keep this a Bowden setup, just to keep the hot end area and the thing that actually moves back and forth, just to keep that as light as possible. If it was a direct drive, it would kind of be slinging it left and right. They would have to put another Z axis on the other side, or another Z lead screw, and then all that would just drive the costs up on this machine. So basically what they did was they gave you an Ender 3 style machine with pretty much endless upgradability, and then they ramped up the speed for you so that you can go up to a certain extent. Now, I don't exactly know what algorithm like this they use for their fast print mode, but it looks like it just doubles whatever you have in your settings, which is really fast. Like standard, my standard profile is 60, so it goes all the way up to about 120, and that's what this was printed at. So before we jump into the pros and cons, let me just talk about the prints real quick. So we started off printing one of these things from the standard test files for the T3 on their website, and quickly found out that it just couldn't do it. It was printing too hot, printing too fast, things were snagging, and eventually it clogged, and that was the end of that. I slowed it down and changed filament, and we were still failing, clogging almost right away. Then I slowed it down to a crawl after taking off the tube, making sure that it was seated properly, and still we had clogs. I tried a different model just in case it wasn't this model, and we still had clogging and heat issues right away. So then slowing it back down, we were able to get a successful print, but it was still printing too hot for some unknown reason. Then I decided to take the whole thing apart. There was just too much failure at that point. I think we printed one of these little pieces, but it just instantly clogged. So I took the whole hot end apart, as you guys saw in the video, and I replaced the nozzle, because that was the only other thing, since it couldn't have been the files themselves, it couldn't have been the filament since we switched to fresh filament, it couldn't have been the file since we sliced our own file and did the same thing. So the only other thing it could have been was hardware. So we swapped out the nozzle and instantly found the problem. This nozzle just has a little bit of a manufacturer's issue on it, where there is clearly a gap between the nozzle, and that area was just filling with filament, and during these really fast prints and retractions, it was just clogging. The aftermarket nozzle, if you guys go back to where I showed it at the top, it was machined a little bit better than this, so as soon as it was in, the printer started printing as it should, as it was supposed to be printing. So we went back to the same filament. I wanted to make sure that we tested to make sure that it wasn't the filament's problem, and you know, the rainbow filament, as you guys saw here, printed perfect. And I printed two of those cups because one of them was fast and one of them was slow. Could you guys tell which one was which? As you can see, you can see a difference between them. When you go really fast, it does make a little bit of a worse print. But hey, if you guys needed something printed fast, throw 0.6 millimeter nozzle on here, slice it for 0.6, and print at those speeds, and technically you should be able to print not only fast but okay quality. If you guys needed some kind of something printed really quickly, like a draft or just during some testing, it would actually be pretty viable. Now, as far as getting really good quality out of it printing that fast, I don't think this is going to be the machine. I just think this is, as a TLDR, I think this is a budget-oriented machine with some tuning done to it to make it go a little bit faster. I think if you just go fast all the way and don't turn it down to like another 50%, it just goes beyond its extruder, beyond the filament. It just can't print that fast. At least my example can't. But as you can see, you can kind of hone it down, you can focus it a bit more, and you can make it really, really usable. And I gotta say, at first I really didn't like this build plate, but as I started printing more on it, it became actually quite good, to be honest with you. So that's a pleasant surprise. Let me just dive into the pros and cons, in our case the cons and pros, and I think we'll talk way more about the whole machine. So I'm going to go through these kind of quick, just so that I don't bore you with all these, but I do think these are important to go over. I do this for all of my machines, and I did use this machine for a little bit over a week. So let's see how it did here. So the cons: there's no slicer instructions in the box, nothing in the manuals that we found, and I was looking around everywhere, I couldn't find them. However, after putting in the SD card, I did find the instructions on there, and they did have specific instructions on how to set the machine up in Cura, which is how I made my profile for the printer. And then I just used my Aquila profiles, which are always available on the Discord. There's a whole section for all of my profiles, things like that. So if you guys want those, jump on into the Discord. And then I quickly found out that there was no STL files, as you guys saw in the video when we were checking out the screen. So I went on their website and got the specific 3 files for the T3. They're T3 test models. That's the organizer, the cup, and that little tiny little scraper. So that we went ahead and printed those. So that's the cons. No instructions out of the box, kind of almost expected like a piece of paper, but you have to put in the SD card into your machine, into your computer, and then get them from there. Noisy fans. I don't know if you can hear it now, but it's definitely humming along, and it's not amongst my quiet machines. It's definitely has some loud, cheap fans. It is a really inexpensive machine. So we can't expect Noctua fans from this thing, you know? It has an old school screen. Now this is a double-edged sword. I know some people really prefer those screens, especially if you're planning on running Octoprint or any kind of other printer management software. You're never going to really use that screen outside of just super basic commands, and that thing will do perfectly fine. And the other side of that coin is that that screen is actually more compatible with aftermarket motherboards than other screens, because other screens have custom graphics on them, and this doesn't. It just uses straight good old Marlin and really basic menus. So that screen tends to be liked by people that really mod machines, because you can really quickly modify it. Then the final con, the most important one really, is in fast mode. If you're just slicing something or even their own files and you turned on fast mode, the extruder cannot keep up. No matter how much spring tension you give that thing, it literally cannot keep up. It starts clicking and it skips, and it can't keep up with the speed. You have to play with this you have to play with the speed setting on the screen, turn it down to about 80, 75%, maybe even lower for it to stop clicking. Turn the temperature way up to around 230, 240 even I tried. That's really the only way to stop that extruder from skipping anywhere on fast mode. Obviously, if you turn fast mode off in the menus, and then it's just a regular Ender 3 style clone, and then it has all the benefits of all the modifications it has on it, like a dual gear extruder. All right, that's the cons. Let's get to the pros. There are actually a few pros. All right, so no wires to connect, just a handful of screws during assembly. Really actually great. You don't have to put anything together in terms of connections, which can be some of the most confusing parts on these machines, even though they're just basic connectors. Sometimes just, if you've never done that type of thing, I could see how that could be confusing. But here, there's nothing to attach. Just put the pieces together, screw them together, and you're already set up. Leveling is fast and easy. First you do a Z offset, then a manual leveling, and then an auxiliary leveling. And all of those things are done through the menu. They're all guided. Very easy, very fast. There's an LED pointing downward, a white LED pointing downward, and that is really nice. It lights up the print area, lets you see your filament in action. It's actually quite nice. I think everything should have a nice little white LED pointing down. Easy access to fast mode, and you don't need to slice it fast. That's true. You can literally keep your current slow like this files and then try fast mode, and then if it's too fast, just slow it down right there on the screen. You don't have to reslice anything for it to go fast, and you can test it by printing something and then printing it again and turning fast mode on and then just having it go crazy. So I think that's pretty cool how they did that it's done kind of like post slicing. Plenty of Marlin features right out of the box. That's true. You can do a lot of tuning in there. A lot of settings are already available to you. And since this is pretty much vanilla Marlin with just a few custom settings, I'm pretty sure you can, if you're comfortable with firmware, I'm pretty sure you can unlock even more on there. The runout sensor detects clogs. Actually, this is the first time I'm seeing this. The first, not only for this machine, but the first in all of my machines. I've never seen a clog detection system before. I'm assuming they use some kind of laser or light that's pointing to the filament or something along those lines, maybe like a roller type of system. I don't know what's exactly in there, but it does detect jams. The whole time that this was happening, it would actually stop instead of printing in the air, which I actually think is probably one of its most valuable features. The fact that it does that because it goes so fast, I have a feeling that they ran into this type of issue in testing, and to prevent just wasteful filament or having it just sit and clog trying to print, they added that feature. And as soon as it gets jammed and it sits there for a while and the filament isn't extruding, it stops and halts the machine, and you could fix it and hit continue for it to print, or you can just redo the print however you'd like. So I think that this is one of its best features for sure. There's a nice fan shroud under the cover, so while we were taking it apart, most of the time these plastic shrouds here have just a fan blowing all over the place, just everywhere underneath of it. But this has a little shroud that forces the air to go just around the heatsink. I actually think that tiny little bit of detail is actually really, really nice, and it's just a great feature to stop this thing from overheating on long prints or on fast prints. So they definitely tested it, figured out that it needed a shroud instead of letting all the air just go everywhere, and I think that's cool. Another thing that's similar that they did is they added a secondary fan that's just blowing on the stepper motor of the extruder. That's another really unique part to, for this machine, or for this style machines. I don't know of any other one that has an active cooling fan on the stepper motor to the extruder. So, there's little things here that are actually pushing things forward. And it looks like I have jam detection on here again. I guess because I was doing all the jam detecting, trying to figure out a profile for this thing. That's where it came up. All right, and then I have here the perfect vase settings from my trial and error here. I did print that at a 0.6 millimeter width, which means it's going to over extrude with a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, making it really thick. This thing barely flexes, and it makes for a really nice durable print for a vase print. That's at 2.2 millimeter layer height at 40 millimeters per second. So when we double it, it goes at least 80. At 230 C on the hot end. Yes, that's really hot for PLA. When you're going that fast, it'll skip if you try to lower that number at all. And that's at 65 on the bed. So those are my settings. 6 millimeter width at 2 millimeter layer height, 40 millimeters per second, 230 on the hot end, and 65, and that's at fast mode, between 100 and 80%, just testing. And I was getting clicks on a couple of the layers, but all towards the bottom. Nothing when it was printing the single all the way around, and this actually came out a pretty good print. So what can I say? There were some hiccups, obviously. There was a little bit of a hardware issue. I'm not sure if they tested this machine or not. At the end of the day, I think if you were brand new to 3D printing and you bought this machine and you had a problem like that, I think you'd be so discouraged, this thing would be going back. That's for sure. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I've had plenty of machines do that. I think my Focus Odin had a nozzle issue, and after I changed it, I used it for years, and I love that machine. My Voxlab Aries had a similar thing with PTFE tube, but there was an issue. Just had to fix it, and then it's been printing literally for years. So there's these little, things to expect from really low budget machines, and this just happens to be one of them. I think you have to come into these things with an open mind and not expect an industrial machine when you're paying bottom dollar for these prices. So for the money, I think they actually give you plenty. I think they give you plenty of headroom to tweak, plenty of headroom to modify, but you have to keep that in mind. I think that's what this machine is for. This is definitely not somebody looking to get this thing out of the box and print stupid fast right away. I think it's going to have to take some trial and error, figuring things out, waste a couple days worth of tuning and plastic, but then if you do it right, I think you'll have a pretty fair machine on your hands with upgrade paths that are pretty obvious. New beds, new bed materials, dual Z. There's just lots of things you can do. Because this is, at the end of the day, an Ender, you can do anything to it. So it's an open platform for you, just another option. But the thing that this does a little bit differently is the extra sensor, and lets you go a little bit faster right out of the box through the menu, which no one else really does, at least as far as I know, on this type of machine. So not the best, not the worst. I think if you're interested, you at least know what to expect. I think if you had this amount of money, I might recommend you going to something else. But if you're set on this machine, here was my experience. And if you guys are interested in it, there's going to be links down below. Please go ahead and consider using those, because they do help out the channel and don't cost you anything. All right, guys, I think that's all for me today. Hopefully I gave you all of the information on this machine that you expected, and if not, let me know in the comments below. I'm still going to be using this thing. Would you like me to test something specific? I'd love to talk to you in the comments below. All right, guys, check out the Patreon for this channel. Check out the Discord for this channel. The Discord is popping with awesome prints that people are printing. It's just amazing to scroll through there. And actually, let me know in the comments if you guys want me to do a video reaction where I just go through and see what everyone is printing in our channel and kind of show off all the cool things people are printing. I think that might be a cool one. All right, that's enough for me today. And as always, I'll see you all in the comments. Later.